Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inner World Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Pedro Cortina. In this podcast, we aim to explore the most powerful, efficient, joyful, and sustainable models of inner transformation out there. Thank you for joining us today. Let's talk about curiosity. Curiosity may probably be one of the most important elements in our path to personal growth. Curiosity is the antidote of stagnation, of ego, of rigidity, of bias. It is the antidote to assumptions. It is a source of clarity, of understanding. It's a source of peace and relaxation because we remain open. Probably one of the most important sources of anxiety, inner discomfort, even suffering is this sense of, or this experience of rigidity that we sometimes end up embodying or manifesting for a myriad or multiple reasons in terms of our life experience. Our egos are built from the moment we're born with the main imperative or need to secure our viability, for us to be able to survive in this world. And our genetic infrastructure, our genetic system is never really sure where is it that we are going to be born, or what are the circumstances around us, or what the challenges are going to be. Evolution and our capacity to adapt is incredible. Yet there is a very basic mechanism of adaptation that we go through when after we are born, especially early on, by which we sense the environment, the conditions for our viability, the conditions for our survival, and we literally start building up a persona, a hardened self that holds a very large amount of assumptions and judgments around what life is and how to survive it. And as this is necessary and useful, at a certain point it transforms into, it tends to transform into an impediment. Interestingly enough, what at first serves us as a way of nurturing ourselves early on in terms of establishing our viability, as time goes on, in many cases, these same elements of our survivalist infrastructure begin to generate more problems than solutions in our lives. And our mechanism, our mind, our internal infrastructure is very efficient. It tends to be very efficient. And by efficient, I mean it focuses on viability and surviving mostly. And other aspects of it probably are secondary. So interestingly enough, when it comes to life and to purpose and to realization and to happiness in general, it would seem to be the case that our genetics are not necessarily designed for purpose, realization, and happiness. They're mostly designed for the continuation of the species. And elements that would serve us in the process of establishing our viability, as I said before, often turn into obstacles when it comes to our inner joy, our happiness, our inner experience of purpose and realization. And so curiosity comes in as the perfect antidote to soften these hardened assumptions and this condition of viability that is one of the first things that our system, as it lands in as we are born, establishes for viability. It's not uncommon to see that if at some point we begin to experience anxiety in life or worry or even more intense or complicated situations like a dread or depression, etc., it wouldn't be rare or strange if we look at the source of this condition, that we actually find a survivalist mechanism that is actually fueling this anxiety or this misalignment, but that it has come to a point where it is disproportionate or not useful or not needed given the circumstances we are experiencing right now. When I was younger, I was probably 5 years old, I suddenly found myself in a very busy place. It was some kind of restaurant or some kind of venue. And I remember getting quite anxious around trying to find one of my parents. And suddenly, at the distance, I thought I recognized my father, who was, by looking at his back. And I ran to him, and when I grabbed him by the leg, I turned up and I realized it wasn't him. And that generated a profound sense of doubt in me in circumstances that are busy or that are where there's too many people. And as I grew up, I embodied this kind of weariness or this kind of pause around interacting with people in circumstances that were busy. And so this is a great example, because something that, when I was 5 or 6 years old may have served me to be more careful around or better able to scan where my parents were at, actually became or ended up provoking or producing in me a little bit of a sense of insecurity when it came to larger venues or busy venues where there are many people. And so at some point, now in my, at some point later on, several decades after that, it was clear that there was a disproportionate apprehension around being in large spaces or being in spaces where it was busy or there was a lot of people. And my initial learned, hardened survivalist response was to kind of overscan, keep to myself, be overly sensitive of where people were at and who was talking to whom, etc., etc. And as I did my own work and explored my own the origin of this in myself, I was able to clearly notice that this was one of those survivalist mechanisms that had served its purpose at some point and that was not longer serving anymore. But this exploration required a good amount of curiosity, because it is very easy to project further risk when we are further exposed to circumstances that trigger anxiety. As an example, if we have a similar experience as I did, and then we kind of grow into situations where you are in conferences or you are making presentations to large audiences, etc., etc., it would be very easy to, as soon as we identify the apprehensive reaction of our system that is driven by original viability or survivability, to make further assumptions. These large spaces are not comfortable, or what's going on with me? Why am I not comfortable in interacting and meeting people in this way, for example? And then we could further, complicate situations by increasing our bias towards others and projecting onto them, a sense of lack of safety or of being exposed. And in many cases, sadly, this continues for life. In many cases, the resolution we end up having is, no, this is not for me. This is something that it's not for me, and this is not a path for me. And we actually begin to discard possibilities around our lives because we're taking the original reactive survivalist, embedded, probably in many cases subconscious reactivity to mean something that it actually is not happening anymore. And so without a healthy doses of curiosity, we're unable to actually explore what is going on and what is the origin of what is going on and the causes behind it. So that's an example of how something that may be a tool for viability when we're younger can actually get in the way as we progress in life. But more importantly, it is a good example as well in terms of how to address a situation like this. What is the key to being able to question these beliefs or these assumptions or these projections we are experiencing or are taking as granted or as a given? Curiosity is the source of all advancement in this world. I couldn't even imagine, any scientific advancement that wouldn't have curiosity at its source. But when it comes to personal growth, I think the most important element around curiosity is to develop this capacity of bringing that curiosity into our inner world. When we get triggered, the reactive, survivalist, amygdala-driven mechanism tends to take over. And when this happens, we get into tight space where it's all about making it to the other side of the tunnel. And if we just allow the reactivity to take over, probably we will end up more isolated, more disconnected, and less available to ourselves and to others. So if we add, or if we train ourselves, if we practice to become curious when there's any form of inner activation, that allows for the necessary space to better understand what is actually going on, and it opens the door to actually notice what are the triggers, what is the source, and therefore it would be much easier to address or to change or to modify assumptions, beliefs, and therefore behaviors. One of the key elements in many of the methodologies that I use with my clients are centered around curiosity. The moment we notice misalignment internally, we train ourselves to become curious in the moment and delay the process of the amygdala-driven process of making assumptions and making judgments and moving forward with those assumptions and those judgments. Curiosity is also a door to the unknown. And this, I think, is one of the most important aspirations of every single human being, to get to experience more life, more love, more connection, more understanding, more inspiration, so we are able to produce more art, more offerings to the world, more to be able to serve more, to be able to alleviate the suffering of others more, or to be able to love more fully and in a way that resonates deeply with who we are. So curiosity is also the door to what we do not have. It's interesting to see how, as humans, there is this, probably parts of us are very clear internally on what's missing for me, what do I want? Have I experienced enough love? Have I experienced enough connection? How have I experienced enough inspiration? And if we do not have the door of curiosity open internally as a possibility for us to explore, then probably what's going to happen is we're going to simply continue living in the same hardened patterns and cycles we have been living in since we can remember. Missing out on the opportunity of going further, of experiencing more, of embodying joy, of experiencing bliss. So that is a very powerful way of doing it. And the particular exercise is very simple. If we start becoming aware of our body, of our inner world, of how reactivity shows up, how we get activated by certain things, to train ourselves to, as soon as we notice that in our body, as soon as we notice that, open up instead of jumping into the survivalist tunnel. It's a shift, a very powerful shift, a very powerful shift where we break the cycle and move into spaciousness. Break the cycle of repetition, and we move into spaciousness. So one of the things I recommend my clients is, as soon as you notice the misalignment, as soon as you notice the discomfort, as soon as you notice the activation, pause, take a deep breath, and just say the words, what am I missing? Or what am I not able to notice? Or what else is there for me to see? And you can use the words at first to allow for that to happen. But most of my clients end up moving into a situation where it's just the recognition of the misalignment, and they immediately move to openness. There's not even a question anymore. They move into curiosity. They move into openness. They move into a kind and gentle exploration mode towards inside. At some point in the series, we're going to talk about parts work and the work of many scholars and people that have identified within ourselves an infrastructure of sub-personalities that is the source of much of our inner dialogue, and how these sub-personalities or parts are sometimes more activated than others, and how some sometimes take over and influence our thoughts, our emotions, our speech more than others. So one of the practices as well that could be considered for this is, as soon as we experience the misalignment, we open up, we move in, and we get really curious about what's going on in this world of parts, in this world of our inner sub-personalities, you know? Who is activated internally, what sub-personality or what our identity is activated internally. And what happens, and we will explore this in that episode, what happens is that as soon as we identify that a part of us is activated or out of alignment, we can actually start to have a beautiful, curious, open conversation with the actual sub-personality in a way that it makes sense, in a way that we understand what is going on and what is the source of the activation, to later be able to address it and update this sub-personality into a higher, clearer, more compassionate, more curious, more whole understanding of life. So in itself and by itself, developing the capacity to be curious about our inner world is one of the key and most important elements of personal growth. It allows for openness, it allows for flexibility, it allows for humility, and by no means I'm not trying to say in any way that curiosity should eventually turn into some kind of disconnecting experience from the world, or kind of a floor mat experience when we're interacting with others. Curiosity is not about necessarily taking on someone else's perspective around something, or us necessarily acquiescing or being in agreement with a different point of view. Actually, genuine curiosity, heart-centered curiosity, is open as much as it is open to our exploration of what someone else is saying. It is also open to explore the validity of what another person is saying in terms of its applicability and its relevance to our lives. So, in no way curiosity is a form of it's in no way a form of weakness. Curiosity is the opening to genuine exploration of whatever is going on. Because of these mechanisms, these survivalist mechanisms that we've referred to in this podcast and in many others, our natural tendency is to be driven by them. And as we are driven by these survivalist mechanisms, the outcome tends to be survivalist. So let me say that again. When we're driven by survivalist tendencies, the outcome tends to be a survivalist one as well. When we are driven by survivalist mechanisms, the outcome tends to be a survivalist one as well. And what are these survivalist mechanisms? Fight or flight or fawn. Basic. And if we take a little bit of time and we explore the difficult situations we've had in our lives, in relationships, at work, generally speaking, with others, and every time, if we do an exploration, every time we begin with a survivalist reaction, and we continue to see the survivalist reaction go through till the end of the process, we will tend to notice that unless we are on dire circumstances where our survival is actually on the line, but generally speaking, in our daily interaction with people, in important interactions with people, if we continue on the path of simple survivability and viability, we will notice that the outcomes tend to be ones of separation, of disconnection, of dissolution, and of breaking relationships, or doubting trust, or withdrawing trust as well. So this would be the invitation. Every day, every time, if this is comfortable, if this is viable, every time that we experience any kind of misalignment or triggering inside, instead of jumping into the bandwagon of survivalist processing, we identify the discomfort, we open up, and we get very, very curious. And as we get very, very curious, we can explore in this space of non-reactivity. We can genuinely explore, okay, what was I wanting? Where am I coming from? And in the same way, we can also explore, what were they wanting? Where were they coming from? And in this process of openness, we can start having an enormous amount of insight, an enormous amount of aha experiences. Just, oh, this is where I was coming from. This is what was driving the fear. This is what was fueling the discomfort. This was what was triggering me. And if we do that, looking at someone else, we're also able to see a lot more than what we were narrowly perceiving when we were driven by these survivalist mechanisms. We are able to notice, oh, possibilities. Probably there's something else going on. Probably I should kindly and gently ask. This reaction is not common in this person, for example. And this curiosity can lead us to further and deeper conversations around what could be going on for the other person, instead of us trying to run on the fuel of assumptions and projections. Probably one of the most taxing and energetically expensive ways to live, living fueled by the survivalist mechanism. So that would be the practice. Misalignment, openness, curiosity, and through curiosity, engaging with the world. Through curiosity, engaging with ourselves. Instead of self-judgment, self-criticism, self-abandonment. Why? What was going on? Where were you coming from? What was happening inside? What was being fueled and why? Instead of making assumptions and running away and closing doors with other people. If we don't want to close them, of course, if we want to close them, we just close them. But if we don't want to close them, what is going on? What else could be going on? And be careful not to make assumptions or make decisions around what could be going on for the other person, but just opening up for that, opening up to that, and engaging in further curious conversations with the others. We probably notice the difference between having an interaction with someone where everybody is making assumptions and is having projections of each other on each side. And probably we've all had the experience of how that rapidly turns into a defensive, decaying experience of just trying to one-up the other person, versus when there's something going on, that there's genuine curiosity coming from the other person. Tell me more about this. I want to understand. Instead of, oh, you always do this. Or you never listen. Or this happens all the time. Curiosity is the source of all evolution, is the source of all learning, is the source of, inner evolution or relationship evolution. It's the source of all learning. And it's a beautiful, beautiful path of interaction where we stop being isolated, where we stop embodying blind righteousness, where we stop feeling disconnected from others, and we begin to open ourselves, and we begin to be open to others and what they're bringing into our lives. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today in this exploration through curiosity, and see you next time.